Easy, everyone. So in this tutorial, we are going to be taking a look at a forthcoming track of mine. It's not out for a number of months, actually. It's coming out in April on Burnski's Constant Sound sort of sub-label, sister label, whatever you want to call it, Pilot. So Pilot actually started off as like a bit of an electro sort of breakbeat type label, but ultimately it's sort of grown into something that's a bit houseier and a bit more experimental. But this is like a bit of an electro house tune, which so this fit well as the A1. But yeah, you can listen to this track. It's on pre-sale now. I'll show you. So if you just go to Juno and you type in Kepler Zone, you can hear all the tracks from this EP. And you'll be able to pre-order it online as well. So yeah, all four. This is Zone. This is the A1, and the inspiration behind it. There's a bass sound that we used in a Sweely track that I really like the sound of, and I just bought this without realizing. I bought this DX200, this Yamaha Groove Box, which is unbelievable. But yeah, basically I bought this and I started experimenting with some of the sounds on it, and I realized that he'd used that bass sound with a bit of glide on it, a bit of portamento. So what I did was I just used that and just created a completely different bass line. But I was inspired by that preset on this synth. What I actually then went to do is I sampled it and used it in the Studio Orbit Revival plugin that's available now in our store. Shameless plug promotion there. But yeah, you can get that patch, and I'll show you exactly how that sounds when we dive into this project. But yeah, this is the A1. It's like an exclusive first listen, which I like to do a lot on Studio Orbit. And then we're going to talk through absolutely everything. We're going to talk about the arrangement, the sample sources, how I put everything together, mixdown, that sort of thing. It's very simple in terms of the processing. I don't tend to process stuff too much because I think if your sample sources are correct and they are good quality in the first place, you don't really need to do too much. So yeah, anyway, let's just dive straight in. Let's listen to the main portion of the tune, and then we'll go through the track. We've got this breakdown here. And then we do have this like electro bass section. But yeah, that's the main sort of idea of the track. I think the track's quite focused around that bass line because I think that bass line is a really strong feature. It's very catchy. I wanted that to run throughout the track. You can see it's here in audio, but it's also layered with some sub. But yeah, that's the main basis of the tune. And yeah, the first thing I did was I built the drums. When I'm starting a tune, I'm almost always starting with the drums and the groove. So we started with obviously just the kick, and then there's also the drum group here. I then layered that with the top loop. Which has got some nice glitches in it. We've got then another little perk loop here. And then these little glitchy hats and the crash, which complete the full groove and groove groups. So quite full sounding drums, but also in a way kind of minimal, especially in the intro here. So let's just go through each individual element and just see how each of those have been put together. So we've got this really punchy kick drum. Now, if I was to just get open this Pro Q, what I like about this kick, and I've realized something, for a track like this that's very bassline focused, like the mixdown on this is really tight because the kick itself. So if I have a look here, it's actually very much dominating like the sort of main frequencies around the low mids. And so if you're looking at like around 50 hertz and down 20, you're not really taking up too much room sub-wise. So if you listen to the relationship between the bass and the kick, the kick and the bass, and then we take a look at the master there, you can see that some of those sub-frequencies, if we remember what the kick looked like, you can see that they're being dominated, they're being filled out rather by the actual bass line. So we've got the sub layer and the main bass, which we'll get to as we go. But I just think that it should be a creative decision as to whether the kick's going to hold out the space in the sub or whether the bass is. So I think that's something to just bear in mind. And I find that some of these, this kick drum sample here has come from a Vengeance pack. So it's like a lot of these are really clean. So if I just have a look at which one this has come from, it's come from the Vengeance Sound Electroshock Volume 1. So really nice kick drum. I couldn't recommend like the Vengeance stuff for this particular type of sound enough, really. It's just a solid choice. Really clean samples, really loud. So I've just taken the some of the release out, because if you listen to it, if I just solo the kick, like originally, and then you're getting that boom, but I want it to be nice and tight. So if I just undo that, a lot shorter. And what I always do, I always keep it in this one-shot mode, and I'm just fading out the sample a little bit there, so it's a bit more gradual. Whereas if you like that, you sometimes get a weird click. Whereas that's got a bit more of a steady fade out. So yeah, kick's really simple. In terms of what's going on, we're leaving some gaps for the kick, like here, for example. And here. So those little stoppy-starty, like, fills, if you like, I tend to put them like there. You would expect it to be at the end of this bar, but like it's just good to do them when you wouldn't expect them. And you're taking all the drums out, replacing it with a little bass glitch sample here. And it just keeps things interesting and fun, I guess. And then you just play with the other ones, like this one, for example. And here. And here. So you're trying to make them, each time you want it to be a little bit different. Like there's a vocal sample. So those little fills are definitely worth doing. So you can see that the kick's coming out in certain places. Here also. So what I like to do as well with my breakdowns is like, rather than filtering the kick, you could also just work with the utility and automate the gain. So you can hear here the kicks being faded in. And how I've done that kick roll is basically just like done these two velocities. So if I was to just do all the velocities like this, it's a bit much that. So I think to give it like a bit of variation, I've got like some velocity changes on every other. But other than that, it's just a simple 4/4 kick rhythm. So moving on to the rest of the drums then, we've got a clap here which has come from a Wave Alchemy Electro House Underground sample pack. So if I go in my new Electro House packs, I believe it'll be in here. There's a few other ones. So yeah, there's this one, Electro House Underground Wave Alchemy in here. If you go to like the drum hits in here, we've got some nice, really nice. Do you know what? I think I've actually just used this pack once when I made this tune. But I'm going to come back in here because they're really nice and clean. I mean, some of these kicks are quite nice. So yeah, a really cool sample pack, that one. There's some electro percussion in there, like little glitches and things like that, which are really good. If you put a load of those on like a drum rack like this, let's just do it for example. And we've got let's just solo this and let's just get a load of those little perks. Where is that folder I was just looking at? There we go. Let's just drag all of these in there. Like that, and we'll just see, and then go create a new MIDI clip there, set a little loop going. I just love when it gets to the, so when I'm creating a tune, I'll just be like, right, let's go in here, solo that too, find a nice, little bits like that, do you know what I mean? Like, and then you have a bit of variation on something like that. You can start to build grooves really easily that way. Right, yeah, so it's just experimentation, do you know what I mean? But like, well, there you go. Obviously really loud, but. And then you have different variations, but yeah, those sorts of glitches are really good for that. But we're veering slightly off topic there. So yeah, let's just have a look at the clap here then. So yeah, it's come from that sample pack. I've got its own reverb on there because I wanted it to just be like nice and tight away from everything else. But yeah, there's not much to be said for the clap. I've taken out some of the low end, and again, I've done this one shot technique here where I've just got the fade out happening and I've shortened it. I tend to shorten my drum samples a lot if they're quite long, because otherwise I think with long claps with loads of reverb and things like that and really long ones, it can sound a little bit techno-y, and if I'm not going for that vibe, which I'm not here, I want it to be nice tight grooves and really short decay, really punchy. And then yeah, it's just got a little bit of reverb on that clap as well there. Closed hat. It's just a closed hat. You know, it's just really simple stuff. It's just I've got two in there, but I just use one. And yeah, it's really short, and I've just put some EQ in there just to take out the bottom end, you know, and then it's got some in-center reverb. So nice and simple. We've also got this tick hat, which is something that you might see me doing my breakdowns before, but like basically I find that having those hats in there, so if I just go in and like, so they're Vengeance hats, so are the other ones, and that, you know, they're great. So they've come from like a Vengeance Electro Essentials, it's called. Yeah, so basically you're panning them, and if you look at the MIDI, it's like, again, it's just like ones that the velocity changes are coming from this. It's add some random from the MIDI effects, so it gives it a bit more of a human feel. Really short hats, but like, let's listen to everything with it in. Really, it's like quite low in the mix there, but if you take it out, it makes such a big difference to filling things up. What I found that before I was doing that, if I'm just using a single hi-hat, like it's missing some some information in the tops. It's such a good technique, so especially in things like intros, but I have it running all the way through the track. So yeah, just that little tick hat, and then we've eventually got this open hat, which happens in the main section. So what I tend to do is have an open hat. Like, I hear this a lot in the tracks that I get sent for feedback. Like, what I think some people are tempted to do is have the energy in straight away. So like, you're lobbing in the hi-hat here. Whilst it's quite subtle, it's like I would say hold back that energy a little bit until we're getting into these main sections here. Like, you want the impact to be after the first drop, like this. So it's, yeah, I'd hold back on those sorts of elements. So yeah, just an open hi-hat. Again, that's come from Vengeance Pack, the Electro Shock Volume 1. So yeah, all the drums and that basically come from those packs. So in here, so what I did was I chopped up a loop here. You can see that there's different like points where I've cut them, and then you've got these little reverse bits. I mean, I should really have coloured them differently like this so I could see in the arrangement, but I mean, yeah, there's even these little. So yeah, just chopped up a loop. This has come from it's come from this pack actually, the Wave Alchemy one. So in here, if we go into the drum loops, really nice drum loops if you wanted to make this kind of sound. Like that, for example. That's sick. I'm going to mark that for myself because already I'm wanting to make a tune with something like that. But like, it's the little glitches in between that you're really wanting, and then when you chop it up, it's sounding a little bit unique in itself. So yeah, here we go. That really just fills it out. And then eventually we've got some crashes in. And the crash has got a bit of delay on, just so, because the drums are quite minimal, it just sort of fills it out rather than just a short crash. It just fills out that space a little bit. So you can hear here. And I've sort of high passed it so there's no bottom end in it. Then we've got this perk loop. Because I felt like it just needed a bit more percussion just to fill things out in certain areas, particularly, again, as we've said, this is an area that needs a bit of impact. So without it, which is fine whilst we're just building things up, but we needed it in here, I think. So yeah, that's a perk loop. It's just really nice, just as it is. So I've taken some of the bottom end out. That's come from a Loop Masters Fidget House pack. It's just called Loop Masters Fidget House. And there's some really nice perk bits in there. So Fidget. Where is it? In here, I imagine. There we go. Yeah. So in there, Loop Masters Fidget House. And yeah. Got some really nice stuff in here. Great for starting tunes when you've got like a little groove going like that. You can start to build your drums around it. So yeah, that's the perk loop. We've got this little glitch hat which I took from like a little glitchy off from that. So if you dragged it all out, it's like a full loop. It's not letting me do it now. I must have like bounced it down. But yeah, if you like just listen to that, it's like a triplet hi-hat glitch. So it's just glitchy little bits like that, little details that sort of sound a little bit interesting, a little bit different, I think. So moving on to the bass group then. So what I've done is I've got a track spacer set up, which is side chaining from the kick. So if we go in the bass group, yeah, and it's just basically meaning that the kick's cutting through just on those frequencies where there might be some clashing. And yeah, I guess this is a good time to move on to the bass. So these are the notes. What I did was I found the preset, I put the glide on, and let's... So that's like just the bassline notes, and then you mix it with the DX7. So there's actually an extra few notes in there, some higher ones, that's not in the sub bass, and what that's doing is it's meaning that when it goes up like an octave, it's causing that glide into the next note. So it's it's just an interesting little effect. Like quite often it's nice to have a bit of glide, or it's called on the actual DX7, which is the synth that I use here for this. I actually use the portamento dial. It's the same sort of thing. When it's in mono, you use the portamento and it just glides the pitch into the next note, which works really well, particularly on this preset that I used in the DX200. And as I've said, you can actually get that same sound out of the new Studio Orbit plugin. So let's just, for example, let's just have a little look at that. So if I solo this, we go to plugins and we search for Studio Orbit and we open up Revival, put it on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bass presets. It's called Dexter. I'm going to make sure it's in mono, turn up the glide. And you can achieve that same bass sound just through using the plugin. So yeah, it's obviously pitched down a little bit, so you've got a bit of sub bass in there, but that's how you'd go about doing it. But yeah, please be creative as possible with it. So yeah, basically the bass line was played in myself. I'm always tending to play in bass lines myself with the keys these days, because I feel as though I'm listening to the groove a lot more. Sometimes when I sequence bass lines, or I'm drawing in the MIDI, or just using loops, I'm not always getting the same amount of groove that I get if I'm just playing stuff in, because I quite enjoy just getting into the groove and playing my own keys and bass lines and things like that. So in terms of the processing on the bass itself, I've recorded it directly from the DX200. You can hear there is a little bit of noise. There is some noise from my machines. I'm not sure whether it comes from the sound card. I'm not sure whether it's like something that's interfering, but it's so minor that it's not a problem in the final mix down, but it's something that I need to look at. But also I do think that a bit of noise from your machines does give it a little bit of a, I don't know, like an old school feel or a vintage feel, and it fills out the space a little bit. Some people actually add noise in, white noise or some kind of like just general noise to their tunes afterwards, but it's not something I'm too concerned about. But I did use some erosion, because if you listen, that's the original bass sound. I just found that the erosion helped it cut through a little bit more. Definitely, it's huge a difference. And I boosted the level with the utility, because when it came in, it was recorded a little bit quiet, so I just needed to boost the levels a little bit. So you've got that one bass line there, and then you've also got this variation where I just played a different bass line in. Now, originally I did have like a slight, like this basically went straight into that section again. Hang on. But obviously the sub followed it. But what I got some feedback off Burnski. He was like, look, that bass line is so sick. And that's so strong in itself that like it just needs to go straight back into that, and that can just be a small switch up. But that was the whole section, and then it dropped in like here to that bit. And I feel like for maximum impact, it needed to just go straight into this. So quite often when you're sending tracks as demos to labels, I mean, it kind of, because like Burnski is a friend, I can often take feedback from him, and it's the same with other like people that I've worked with in the past that I've released music on. They'll be comfortable in giving me feedback, but ultimately, like if you're working with a label, they might tell you to change certain things, and that's, I think, what's ultimately the goal for me is to let go of the ego and the preciousness about a piece of music, take on board your trusted feedback, and ultimately make the track something that is the best it could possibly be. So if someone's recognized something and they're giving you some feedback, obviously it's your decision to change it, but that's okay, you know. And I think you've just got to let go of the preciousness of your ideas at times, and so there was something about that he mentioned, and also he gave some feedback on a particular synth that was in here, like this one, which I took out. And then there's even like an extra bit. And there's no bass in that. I think the actual thing was like, yeah. And then it had this like electro bass in the breakdown as well. Like that was the breakdown, and I think we had a conversation about it. I told him that I wasn't sold on the breakdown because I basically wrote the whole tune, and then the breakdown came in like another session afterwards, and I just sort of sat on it for a little bit. And I decided that this was a much better breakdown. I took that synth out. The electro bass does happen like a little bit further on here. But I decided that this wasn't needed because like the solid other elements in there, which, you know, again is some feedback, but also it's a work in progress. Like you're working on these things gradually. So yeah, that's the bassline, and the DX200 was recorded in, and then I took the MIDI. I took out some of the higher notes and basically just added in like a sub bass, which is a preset that I tend to use quite a lot. Well, there's a few in Diva actually. So what I do is go into bass, and like some of the subbier ones around here, I'll just layer underneath and then play with the cutoff, so it's like not got much mid range, and then just sit it underneath and EQ it. So yeah, they're EQ'd together, those basically, so that they sit nicely. And then we've got this little loop here, which is I completely forgot about this sample pack, you know. So I need to go to this. There's obviously like some synth. Which one is that? Is it the 12829? So it was quite harsh. So what I did is I put a filter on it with an LFO and brought this down. So that, like, it doesn't have much movement. Doesn't sound as nice, that. So not only does it take out the harshness, but because the LFO is moving, it gives it a bit of space to move. I used the LFO on the auto filter so much. He's on everything, and I'm just playing with like this the rate a little bit. There's no rules, whatever fits with the groove, but it works so well for me. And then in terms of there's a second auto filter. So in the breakdown, I wanted to gradually bring things out, so that's like part of that, where it's like slowly being filtered out and then filtered back in here. And also I'm doing the same with the drum groups, so the drums are being faded out. I find that what you essentially do with breakdowns is you're taking everything away as much as possible, and then you're going to hit everyone with more impact as you come back in, because you've got, you've taken things out and you've given everything a rest. So yeah, we've got like that's fading down, and then also the sub bass fades down, but it does that with a utility like this. So that's like, and then when you get so if you listen to it in context, and then we've got this like white noise at the bottom, which is like slowly building things back up again. We start to filter things back in. Then we take everything out just before the drop here. The kicks are rolling like that, and they're being filtered in with a utility. Then obviously all the drums come back in, the bass line comes back in. So what we've done is we've filtered out the lead, we've slowly reduced the volume of the bass and faded that out. We've also got like a low pass filter on the drums which are fading out, and then we're bringing everything back in slowly, but then we're hitting them all with everything for that final drop. And then we've got all these vocal bits kicking off, and it's the big moment of the tune, and that's essentially what you're doing. You're reducing and reducing with a breakdown, and then it's much more effective when we bring all of those elements back in together. So yeah, that is basically the most of like the synths, the bass, and the drums. And then what we've got is what right at the bottom of my projects you've always got, and these are the things that I usually do last. And if we just put these all in a group now, this is like the sprinkles that I like to call them, or the finishing touches to a track that fills things out and just really gives it a sense of it being polished and finished. If I was to take all of these things out, you'd notice it. So let's just play the tune now. That breakdown that we just listened to sounds a lot emptier now. So the question that I get asked is, how do you finish your tracks? Well, these are the little details, right, that really make a difference. So in here, let's have a listen to what we've got. I'm just going to turn this back on, but we've got this vocal, and then we've got like just a little call and response between all of these little vocals. So let's have a listen. And then there's this. And then this. And like these effects and you know, it's so lots of little vocals, lots of little effects and things like that. And I actually think I'll have a look where I've got them all from, but what I'm doing with the vocals is I'm usually just opening up something like Splice or Loop Cloud. Loop Cloud's what I use the most because the quality is much better sample wise in terms of like what they're not as cheesy, and I can usually find something that works nice. I just want single little one shots, and then I'm placing them so they talk to each other, and I'm just putting like Ableton's own delay on them and just like, you know, filtering the delay and having it on 3 or 4 usually. Push the feedback to about where it is there, and then the dry wet, so that the delay's filling out the space. So you got the electro vocal here as well. Chord. This effects. And the effects, I mean, you can get from any sample pack. You go into here, you got sound effects. Like stuff like that, you know, it's just anything that you can just play and it fills out the space. And I promise you, you start to add in these little details and your tracks will sound much fuller. And you'll also have like this sense that there's a groove, and like if you're clever with where you place them, and again, there's no rules for this, but like here. So you've got that vocal there. There's always something happening and it's always changing. So there's a question, then you've got a response here, which is different rate there, and then here. Then a completely different like setup here. You got all these little textures. So this is really, really quiet. And also what I'm doing is I'm like automating the track volume so that comes in and out. And the reason that I'm using this here, this texture, is because you can look, that's where the kicks come out. And also we've lost the main bass line. So what we needed to do is have something in there to fill it out. So that's just doing just that, filling things out. And then we've also got this texture here, which I looped. Start bringing the volume up. It's got loads of reverb on it. It's to do with the send. No processing whatsoever. And then it's that, the other part of the loop. And then you like, and that's just come from a Vengeance pack. Again with this one, exactly the same. It's come from a Vengeance sound effects pack. So you can get these anywhere though. These little textures are so easy to find. And then you've got this little atmosphere. Again, that's so low in the mix that you can't even tell it's there really, but if you took it away you'd tell. There's just filling out the area. So that when you're listening and all those elements are taken out, it still doesn't feel like it's empty. So yeah, we've got this vocal here, which I got from Loop Cloud. This one, I believe, has come from the Fidget House pack that I mentioned earlier. So like this one from Loop Masters, there's like Vox Stabs. You know, really simple stuff, but like little one shots, and they work nice. You know, it's pretty cool. And then again, whatever this says, when it says FH, it means it's come from that Fidget House pack. So this vocal is also from there, and this effects, this effect, that has come from a really cool pack called Best Service XXL Production Effects. Some really sick ones in there. That's on the 90s fun pack that was shared on the Discord for free. That vocal has come from Loop Cloud. It's just a reggae one shot with some delay on it. So simple. I'm obviously panning some of these things as well. And what I tend to do actually with this, if you look at like this, for example, so the call and response will happen with like so the question's going in the right channel, and then this response is in the left channel, so it's like it's talking to each other in stereo as well. And I'm just trying to make sure that like there's some spread across the different sort of stereo fields. But yeah, other than that, it's just simple stuff like reverb and delay to fill it out. We've got this other fidget little bass glitch that's come from like the actual bass loops. So another really cool trick, right? Not a trick, it's just a technique. This was a full bass loop, but what I did was I just used part of it and then resampled it. So like, let's say for example, if we go into the Fidget House pack that we've been talking about here, we go into the WAV loops and we go in here. That's that, so that's as it is. But let's say you have like a little fill here. You could just, I mean, I don't know how this is going to sound because I'm just doing this on the fly, but let's say instead of using that, we just found this one, put it in there. It actually works with it. And then you could start to do that little thing that we were talking about with the filter on it, just to give it some movement like that. So you could use parts of bass loops, chop them up, be creative with them, reverse them, you know, put a filter on them with a bit of modulation, whatever you want to do, really. But yeah, and that's it. It's just super simple techniques, really. It's more about the ideas, and it's more about just trying different things and finding really good quality samples and sounds that work. So we've talked about the arrangement quite a bit. Things change quite often, and that's what keeps it interesting. These little fills are really, I always talk about fills and stuff in arrangements, but like, yeah. And then we talked also about this, we'll call it sprinkles here. The icing on top that fill things out. Really give your track the sense of being full and being finished. So yeah, that is a breakdown of my track zone. Give me some feedback. Let us know if you're digging it. If there's any questions about anything at all that I've covered, as always, just give us a shout. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching. And yeah, you'll be able to buy this track on vinyl and digital around April time on Pilot. So keep your eyes out for that one, guys. And thanks a lot for watching.